going to call this meeting to order, and our purpose here today is to give Colleen a chance to explain to us about her position a little bit, about what all the different grant status of the different grants we have, because that seems to be like a whirlwind of many things. And then we will open it up at the very end for public questions, but I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Fantastic. Well, I'll start with kind of a history of the program. It just started a little over a year ago, and it was funded through the ARPA money that came through. It was the state and local fiscal recovery, and so the county for many years knew that they were leaving money on the table, and there was ways to make the departments more efficient, but that wasn't a piece in the budget that could be done. So when they received that money from the SLFRF funding, that was where they put together what they wanted this sort of to look like, and said, we're gonna hire somebody, and then we're just gonna have them create the department and move forward. So that's been where I've been, is getting familiar with, you know, first of all, treasury rules. That's so much fun. Oh my gosh. So I have all these great binders to read through. If you're ever in the mood to fall asleep fast, read treasury. But so that was really where I kind of started, is figuring out what Treasury was doing and then following that, because they didn't know what they were doing until, oh gosh, a little over a year after the fund was actually put out there for people. So there was a lot of communities not even spending their money because they didn't know what the repercussions of this were. So that was really where I spent a lot of my first time, is getting acquainted with Treasury, getting all those networks built up, the Idaho Association of Counties, and getting familiar with where to find these codes and statutes that follow in with this. So in the meantime, I was developing what this department kind of looks like, since it is a whole new department, and you know, figuring out visiting with all the departments, figuring out who needs what, where do they feel they are lacking, what's their wish list, what's their needs, and just so I put that in my little back pocket notebook, that as I'm going out and finding funding or getting notices from places, I can say, oh, we need this or we need that. And so I have a lot of these little things floating around that, this one, where when these releases come out, the NOFOs, then I'm reading it and saying, well, this department needed this and this department needed that. So I'm taking that off their plate so they can concentrate on where they need to be. They have expertise in the roads or the emergency or law enforcement or whatever it is that they're doing. They don't need to be doing this. And so this is a way to bring that money into them without creating additional fiscal burdens on them, because they're spending their time where they're supposed to be. And it brings new money into the department. So that's just kind of where I fit in, is I find things, I help administer them, I do the spreadsheets, I make sure that I'm reading compliance and comparing notes with legal and with Idaho Association of Counties and whatever entity it is that is offering their money out there, so that we're all on the same page and we all are speaking the same language. Or I ask them 1,000,001 questions and they get tired of me, one of the two. So pause on that or just keep going and then you can answer questions.
Oh.
Okay, so then just kind of going down the list, what I'm currently have been doing or am currently doing. So the first was that $2.5 million for the SLFRF fund, and that was figuring out what that looked like and where the money was going to be spent, and then how to keep it in compliance. And then the next one was the $8 million for the LATCF funding. And again, same things. How does that work? What does that look like? What's the reporting requirements? I submitted a request through BDP for the Sheriff's Department. This is every couple of years you can submit grants to reimburse them for their vests. And so we secured a $30,000 grant it's a 50-50 match, so it's a $30,000 grant for them to upgrade their vests. There's a 5-year cycle on the bulletproof vests that they have to adhere to. And so there's a lot that are cycling out, plus new employees, and not all of them fit in the other vests. So that's actually $15,000 coming back into the county out of that $30,000. And it's on a reimbursement. That's another part of it. Is it going to be a reimbursement? Is it just money you get to spend? How is that money actually accounted for and then spent or reimbursed, and doing all of the back end on that side of it? There are currently 7-ish funds that I do spreadsheets on and track and make sure that, you know, I'm watching the expenses, I'm comparing what these reports are that I get from Angela, and, you know, just making sure that my dollars match their dollars and they're in the categories where they need to be, and then go sit on Angela's desk if it's somewhere that it doesn't need to be, or if I don't understand where that goes. I do have the access to the Delphi system, which is where all of the airport grants are reported, so I have the logins for that, and then there's multiple contacts depending on the kind of money and where it is, whether it's CARES, whether it's, so I have a list of those contacts for the FAA and how to go through those and work with Trey on that. Work with Bill on 4 of his funds. Let me back up the airport. There's actually three open CARES right now that we need to start working on getting those monies back in. We have several years left on them, but start gathering those receipts and figuring out where we might be able to put more money into the airport from those. Still have to review that, so I'll sit down and find out where things are going there. There is the 4 funds that I work with Bill and do the tracking and make sure that the money is going into the pots where it's supposed to be or ask questions. Just finished a little while ago the STOP grant, which is a domestic abuse grant through the prosecuting attorney's office, and I did the grant writing and a lot of the data research and putting that together, and that brought $62,533 into the county for domestic abuse programs that are being done. And that helps reduce long-term, those kind of grants help reduce costs to the county, because the intent is to reduce recidivism, to reduce all of the reoffending, and help people get on a better path in life, help them make the right decisions. So that is intended to bring down the cost of law enforcement involvement, court involvement, and all of the ancillary costs that come with crime rates from all of these. And we work with the Shoshone County Resource Center on that, you know, helping on both sides of that with the victims and with the offenders. Of course, the bus, you're familiar with that. I had you sign several things on that. The most recent one was, it'll come to about $230,000, but there's also an additional $140,000 in CARES money that I met with Sam Carroll from ITD this morning, and we're going to start putting together those reports. So that'll bring more money back in to help reimburse for some of the expenses on the bus. The broadband, I went out and had several grants for some of the design studies. So we got a grant to do the speed testing, we got a grant to do the rapid design study. And that's where that $1 million comes into play, is we've done a lot of foundational work and are in a really good position to get federal money for the BEAD or the Idaho broadband money that they have out there. So there's, you know, billions of dollars out there right now. And we sit in a prime location of the disadvantaged communities and the remote access, and you know, they went through that Electrify America where everybody needed electricity to their house. Well, they're in that broadband realm right now, and so we've positioned ourselves with those grants to be really at the forefront. I had a meeting with a potential contractor to do the next phase of the study. I applied for $25,000 from the state for a formal planning grant, and we can take this data and be able to really work that into what it looks like. And they were thoroughly impressed with the work that was done on this, because that puts us ahead of where other communities in other states are. So that was really good.
So what are we doing with the $1 million on broadband?
That
Testing?
No, that's infrastructure. That is fiber and conduit in the ground. And
So where did that grant go? Like, who's administering the work?
That would be through the broadband, yes, but the county will set up all of the MOUs and an understanding of what this is for, timelines, and, you know, so it'll be a very formalized, where is that money going to go to? And it will fall under any of the administration from the federal government and the state government, because it would have to complement work that's, the plan that we have right now is $21 million. So that's just maybe we can get service to everybody through that 21 million. And so that $1 million is designed to complement that. And dangle that carrot so that we can get some of that work done and do some of the match on any bigger funding that we can get to complete it. The idea behind that is there's 23 miles of missing conduit from about the county line coming east, and had some interesting conversations of why that's missing, but we won't go into that one. When that's finished, Syringa has already started that, and they have some ownership in that. So a lot of that cost is already down, and Syringa's the wholesaler. So if we can help them get that in, then we can have the redundancy of having 2 fiber providers rather than just one. So when they cut that line in the Tri-Cities, our valley isn't out because we only have 1 provider. That ripples into making sure that our first responders and, you know, all those, the law enforcement, all of those people have the communication that they need, because we've got now the generators to set things up. We've got that redundancy. We know that up the river, up in Murray, we're gonna have what's needed to be done, because that fiber is there to connect all of those places. And we'll be working with Iron and different communities or different entities like that as well, that it just maximizes it. And right now the broadband team in conjunction with Imagine Idaho and other places are going out to the federal, sorry, I've had allergies today, so if I start coughing, I apologize. We'll be really pushing with other communities on the federal government to allow that BEAD money to be a hybrid design. And what that means is fiber that goes to well, JNR Electronics, which is makes it easier than if I start using techie stuff. So fiber feeds a tower that has a microwave or LTE kind of things, and then that gets beamed out. It's a line of sight, but it's a very cost-efficient way to get it to the most population. So that's a way to maximize that. Then instead of being $9,000 to install it to a premises, it's $3,000. So
now,
that's
these
what
grants
that's
are
about.
not through the county, right? These are grants for those other entities that are bringing the cable in. So we have really nothing to do with, right?
That it's an infrastructure.
Okay.
So because broadband is an infrastructure, a key point with the federal government on infrastructure, that's what that's about. That $1 million is
Okay.
putting that infrastructure piece in, and then you're supporting that infrastructure build for the entire county through that in relative terms, that little bit amount, that $1 million will support the 21 or bigger project that we're looking at for the county.
So what is the outcome for the $1 million? I mean, what's the proposed outcome? Like X more feet of conduit in the valley, or is that the?
It would be to complete that middle mile project where it's then access, and we're fighting for open access, so it can be used by multiple providers to do that last mile. So the end result is that, I'll use me as a guinea pig. I live up Brook Canyon, and I have one provider that I have sketchy service. Or when you get into Pine Creek, there's an awful lot of places you can't even get cell service.
Mm-hmm.
So the end result of that is you would have the infrastructure where we can serve, and I can show you all the techie stuff, but there is, through this project, there would be an additional 5,000 or more households served with appropriate service. So right now, if you get like a 3-in-1, you're doing pretty good in a lot of these locations, if you have service at all. The feds are saying it's a minimum of 120 service that you need, and it's not offered. We have, in the scope of what the feds say is acceptable service to the home or to the business, we are unserved in their eyes. So we would become a served county. That brings in the infrastructure and the redundancy so that we can bring business, so that our home businesses can operate and function, so that people can do online marketing and online sales. It's an economic driver, and so that's the end game, is you provide another asset where we can entice businesses that we can't right now.
Mm-hmm.
We can increase the capacity of our cities and counties to be able to do the jobs that they're supposed to do, and not have to say a lot of bad words at their computer because they can't log on. So,
the computer's fault.
yeah, the end game is to join the 20th century.
21st. Let's go.
Credit, if I could get past dialogue, I'd be excited right now.
Okay, didn't mean to take up all of our time on that one, but didn't know anything about it. so-
Oh, no worries.
And I'll
that's-
probably come back to you with more questions later on I don't want to interrupt
Absolutely.
your whole
Yeah.
flow.
No, that's kind of the big one in there, that big, big allocation that came from the LITCF, and there's a lot of moving pieces into that. So it's just sitting there as a carrot right now. If it can't shake out the way it needs to, then it comes back to the county to use it in different purposes. It will not be something where we're going to say, oh yeah, this company is gonna come in and do this, I keep going back to this, right, I should probably be careful, but they came in, they did their grand dog and pony show, and then they turned around and went to Spokane. Because, we don't want it, doesn't pay enough money for us. So there'll be requirements that you guys will be brought into that to say, what do you want this to happen? And that'll be a part of the negotiation process, which goes back to that $25,000 that I've applied for through the state, because that company will be the facilitator of those negotiations and be able to have very well put together legally binding documents that go out into any projects that are completed. So it will maximize that. I expect a 20-time return on that. Like I said, 1 million, I'm turning it into 25 million if I can. Part of that.
Works, I have some stocks I'd like that.
Well, I have to be careful because then I'm into insider trading, so. So right now, this morning actually, we had a meeting. I'm working with a prosecuting attorney, and we are doing, it's a whole new scope of work and grants that's out there for the ILED. It comes from the Department of Corrections, and it's meant to enhance diversion programs. And so this works on mental health and drug disorders, and the intent is to take, to again reduce recidivism, but also to take certain types of offenses in those and turn them into a diversion to get them back out of the system. And again, that ripple effect of saving the money and not having the jail and everything that goes into that. Part of I covered that was familiarizing myself with all the departments and what we can do with their constantly reading. I'm always doing continuing education, so grant classes or whatever it is that will help me be more efficient and be able to stay on top of terminology or new technology, things like that are coming out. And then I guess just a kind of how I pull all this together so that I can have as many resources and networks and mentors as possible to make sure that we're doing the best is I sit on the Silver Valley Economic Development Board. I'm on Shoshone County Housing. I'm on the Project Uplift Board, and those are all local community boards. But I'm also on the Idaho Rural Partnership and the Northwest Partnership boards. And those are economic development ones, but that's how I get a lot of my information on where grants come from and make those connections with the right entities to pull.
Okay.
So, please talk.
Because what I know about ARPA is what I've read in the paper. So tell me, do you have a list of all the ARPA grants that we have out there that have been approved that are working? Can you talk about when the next round of ARPA grants will come, and can we talk about, like those grants are out there, we'll be signing for them over time as people apply for reimbursement or whatever how does that work?
Okay, so ARPA grants, ARPA is the overarching pot of money. Underneath of that is different allocations for different entities, different purposes. And so that's where
I used the wrong words. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay. I want to make sure that I'm answering what.
ARPA's the
what
only
you're
one I
going
can
after.
remember. Everything else I'm calling Slurpee, lettuce.
Okay. Absolutely. So there is still underneath of ARPA and that whole big bill that came out. There's also they've renamed it now. There's the BIL, the infrastructure bill. There's the Inflation Reduction Act. So there's still money that's gonna be continually coming out. So yes, I am keeping on top of that and finding out what the potential is, what are the strengths, what are we looking at, is it something we're eligible for, is it something that, is going to be worth the time that's gonna have to be put in, and then present those kinds of opportunities to you to see if that's something that fits in with what you're trying to do and want to accomplish. With ones that have been already done, so like the Slurpee one, those were.
Thank you, appreciate it. Now you're using my terms.
Those were already put out for, and grant is the wrong term for it. It was because it's not a grant situation. It was meant to mitigate the effects of COVID, which is a very large term and can fit into a lot of pots. But with that funding, there was the opportunity to take a $10 million standard, why can't I remember that second term?
Yeah, it's the
Not standard
choice.
deduction,
No, it's not a
standard.
deduction, it's an allocation, you get a $10 million, if you're $10 million
Allocation, right.
or under.
Right. So what that did is it freed up the restrictions and the reporting. So that because it was a one-time and it was, again, only $2.5 million, which is so weird for me to say these terms now, and when we're talking millions is only. That's where it came into how we can support the community with that. So those have been sent out to the different organizations, and they're on reimbursement. So they just send me their stuff, and I make sure that it fits in, that I've got all of the invoices and things that are going to be audit proof, and then I put that through accounts payable. So there is that little bit that came back up. There was a reimbursement from DEQ that came in for the air burner. So that's now put back into the Slurpee fund that we can use in a different manner.
It's 100,000, right?
145.
Wow.
Now
Somewhere
there's,
in there.
out of this 10.5 million, how much is left?
So the first 2.5, there's now about 145. And the reason I'm segregating those is because they have different tracking and reporting requirements.
Okay.
So, the Slurpee money, there's about 145,000 in that.
145 sloppy in the Slurpee.
Yep. And I'll have to send you the spreadsheets on that because it's 80.
And how do we advertise to people to know to apply for that? How have you been doing that? Is this something we can let the community know there's
Yep, if that's
more
what
opportunities?
Absolutely, if you want to continue with the process.
This is
that
for
we
the
started, it's great.
nonprofits, right? And,
Yeah, it can be, it doesn't have to be nonprofits. That's been the predominant because nonprofits suffered a lot during COVID. Their donations went down, their memberships went down, those kind of things that happened. But we've also supported the infrastructure projects.
Well, the 145,000, is that the same number that you said that we just got back from the air burner?
Yep.
Is that, so this went to the, one of our departments?
That was transfer
Waste-
station.
Waste management.
Mhm. So because of timing and things like that, that was why that money was used there, is it purchased the air burner because the company had to have it or it was going to go way up in price, but DEQ hadn't finished their processes yet.
Okay.
So it was just that, putting that back in, and I'd spoken with Tammy on how we were gonna do that before, and with the previous commissioners on what was that gonna look like when the money came back in. So it just has come back into the fund as the same money. So it will fall under those same rules.
Reallocated to something else, but you did do press releases and
Yeah.
stuff too for the original advertising.
Now, this will be reallocated to another project that's.
And I do have some requests out there that people have sent in that missed the first segment, so we can start those again. But yeah, the end of every article in the news press that came out that talked about where the funding went, it was if you'd like to apply, and it gave my name and email. So it's just been a continual ongoing, and then, because of the way it works in the valley, it was more of word of mouth saying, man, we got this, and we got this project we were able to get done. And so there was conversations that I had with a lot of different groups.
So out of the 8 million, there's 4 million left?
Correct.
But we don't have.
But we don't have it. So it's sent out in 2 tranches. And so the next one, as soon as that opens up, I have to figure out if they just automatically do it or not. I need to go back in.
You
I've
said
gotta do
something
my
like
reporting.
next December or something like that, is that?
I don't know the exact date, but it was over just 2 fiscal years. So it will be probably this summer after that we get it. But I'll find out for sure, because I've got to go in and do my report next month.
And what's the intent or the purpose of those monies, more specific? Those are the ones that you've been using for county,
Correct.
in buying equipment
Right.
and things. Okay.
And again, because it was a one-time pot of money, and it was something that was a little more substantial, being able to take care of deferred maintenance issues, or, you know, projects, things that there would be no way under any budget to be able to get those done, like getting the sanding trucks. That was we're gonna go back to bicycles and
Getting the
salt.
project manager grants, if we didn't have that, we didn't have the budget for it, and we couldn't have it, so.
Deferred maintenance, I'm gonna use that word, yeah.
Now, is there
Before
any?
we just put it
oh,
off.
Sorry. Is there any strings attached? This is federal government money. Is there, you know, do they have any requests or anything like that, or is this just?
Just auditing, you need to follow procedures. They did do waivers on, now this is on the $8 million, the lettuce money.
Thank you.
That is, you know, they have the different auditing requirements and the single audit and the tracking and all of those things that you have to do. They have requested that you do not, it's not something that they said you can't, but they've requested that you're thoughtful about how you spend it, because it is one time, so don't create additional burdens, which is why that was really the thought behind doing deferred maintenance and things, to get caught up so that the budgets can go towards progression instead of reactions.
So not spending it on salaries and new positions.
Right.
And we have 4 years to spend it.
Okay, so there's a term that you, okay.
Sort of, they're a
Sort
little
of,
vague on
yeah.
that. But yes, it's only 4 million, it's gonna go pretty quick, you know that. But as far as other strings, it's just making sure that you're following compliance, that you're following all of the rules from the federal government. But they don't have anything that's that is less or more than what we would typically do in operations anyway. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, it has a lot of the same rules and regulations as like a general budget kind of a thing. They just want it, they would require, until the funds are gone, they will require annual reports on where did it go, how much is allocated, how much has been spent. So I'll do those they're due every March, and I'll do them every February.
Okay. So is there, and I don't wanna create work, is there already a list out there of all of the grants that have been given out last year that we can look at as we're looking at this, how we give out the next 145 or that? I mean, is there a list of examples of complete?
Some, yeah.
Like
Help me
all I
narrow
have is
that
what's in
down
the
a little
newspaper.
bit.
Like, well, I'm not I can't recall all the grants other than I saw in the paper all the time that another organization getting a grant for this
Okay.
or that. Is there a
That's
list
right.
of, do you have a list of those grants somewhere that we could look at to go, oh, so these are the kind of project, and get a whiff of the flavor of how the money was spent?
Absolutely, so I can send you the ones that we did, either in spreadsheet or, you know, I have, that's a question I do have for you, is I save everything electronically.
Yep.
And so I have a file that has that, and I've done the share file, so, well, I'd have to add your email addresses to it, but your email has that on here. And so you can go in and look at those anytime, and I've uploaded in what, the applications are all in there, they've got the names, the RFF documentation, the backed up where they were going, the tracking spreadsheet, everything's in there.
Is that like on our J drive, is that?
No, it's on the cloud.
Oh,
It's,
okay.
so Microsoft Outlook, I use the OneDrive.
Oh, okay.
So that's something you could help us share. That might answer my question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so I didn't know if you were looking for outside stuff, and, I mean, my brain was going, well, what, I can put you to Coogan County and how they did theirs, but if you're just looking for local piece of cake, that's no problem.
What did we do and how did we do it, and how do we proceed going forward? You know, just wanting to learn a little bit from the past here.
Absolutely. And the application and guiding principles, that was all brought through and, you know, is in the minutes and things like that too, but, I do have all of that down, yes.
Okay, yeah, that would all be stuff.
Just
and-
colorful spreadsheets. They're color-coded.
So that would all be stuff I'd wanna read up on and then probably sit down and pick your brain and just really, I mean, to me, it's a huge blessing the county can get grants. I wanna understand it well enough that I can work well with you on how do we keep going in this direction.
And the lettuce and the.
Slurpee?
Saucy.
Saucy.
Can't keep the grants
So,
straight.
Yeah, those are not grants.
Right.
So, I think that's probably where the confusion comes in when people say, well, they got a grant, well, it really isn't a grant, like, to buy the chillers or whatever. It's money that the government is allowing us to use to bring our stuff up to par where it should be, and so we don't pay it back, there is no match. Different rules than a grant, different reporting rules and stuff like that, so.
Okay. Okay. Lots to learn there. So how do you keep it all straight in your head?
I have a ton of spreadsheets.
She got
So many. Lots.
I am a fan of spreadsheets.
So if we have wish list items,
Yep.
we come see you and say, hey, is this on your list yet?
Yep. Call me, text me, email me, whatever, we can go through it.
And part of, yeah, I think I wanna sit down and question, like I've heard two different answers on whether or not some of this money was already spent to eventually set rooms like this up with cameras, or if those were security cameras.
A little bit of both. So in the spreadsheet I sent you guys that has the departmental ones for the LATC of the lettuce money. The conversation is there to set this up in the virtual meetings. We just didn't have a number to attach to it. So that's where that 17,000 that's left over, it's not formalized, which we will need to come back through and say what, and I've got BJ and Zach. I remember you saying Zach. I'm terrible with names, sorry. If I ever call you George, don't take it personally.
This is Jim.
Yeah, actually. BJ set his computer up and on his first day it said Jim's over there. It's actually really funny and we fixed it. So he's Jim.
So they're working on that right now to get, what does that setup actually look like? And I talked with BJ while he was here, and what we'd like to do is have the opportunity, and I'll come to you with a proposal and see if that fits into what you're trying to do, but it'll have the cameras, there'll be a monitor in here so that you can see who's online and doing all of that, but it also needs to have a portability component, because if this is capacity, then it has to go upstairs. So we're working through how that is. Now there's the new subscription that BJ's doing, and he's working into all the departments. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn here. The Teams is available to everybody, but the conversation around that is that because this is meant for the public meetings, we should have that in a Zoom setting, so it's public facing, where Teams can be more internal. So yes, there's the Zoom conversation, which is a subscription. We're working through what the best equipment would look like, and then we'll be able to have a cost to come in and say, okay, so we know you wanna do this, here's what it's gonna cost, check off.
We'd
on it,
have
we'll
to
get it
come out
done.
of that, fit that 17,000.
Correct, yeah.
All right, that explains. So, yeah, one time I thought I heard it was already funded, and then the next I heard that was just security cameras, and everybody here has an opinion, so I thought I would just ask.
So I guess informally, yes, it was was funded because it was under the understanding that that was going to happen. We just had to know what it looked like and how much it was gonna cost.
Understandable. Okay. Anything else you wanted to present?
No, I've done all the talking.
What's your presentation? You're done. We were led to expect great things. So,
Well, hopefully I didn't
I
disappoint.
told you. I said
So,
that you're the best.
Jeff, do you have any questions?
No, I think that covered it.
Okay, the other item, and Tammy, do you wanna go ahead and discuss
Sure.
that here? So we've had a brief discussion, Tammy and I, that I asked her to go ahead and bring it to a public meeting about the where you report thing, which is currently to the commissioners, but how that might work. And I just asked Tammy if she would come and present. Tracy's not here, but Tracy said she would watch the video that Margie's doing to get the rest of the info there. We're not gonna take action on that yet until Tracy's back and we've all talked, but I did ask while we had the chance with you here and Tammy, if you could explain what you were basically explaining the other day, and I was writing.
Okay. So all of the grants have to be audited, so I audit all of the grants. And I also have all of the financial responsibility for tracking all of the grants, both expenses and income coming in. So I work really close with all of the people that do grants and have done grants since I've been here, so the prior clerk. So on a quarterly basis, we talked about the grants management policy earlier today, and I sent that to you guys. Everybody sends me those reports. I create the spreadsheets for them and send them out, and they make sure that they're providing everything that I need when I go to audit. And then I, pull invoices and whatnot. So when Colleen came on board, we worked together and, basically told her this is what I'm gonna be looking for when I'm auditing, so, as well as what's in the contracts for the grants to make sure that we're meeting all that compliance information. So we talked to the commissioners at that time, and because I had no budget for a grants administrator, and neither did the commissioners anywhere in the county, we decided to go with the ARPA fund or the Slurpee fund to cover her payroll. And we could do that at that time, but there were a lot of restrictions to it, and one of those was that's the only thing she could work on, was the Slurpee stuff. So she couldn't do stop grants, she couldn't do fire mitigation, she couldn't do road grants, stuff like that, just ones that were directly related to the Slurpee money. So when we changed and went to the funding obligation of the 10 million and below, which we are, it removed those. So she could be funded under there and it helped us with other grants. So then we had another conversation, where should she report? Still keep her with the commissioners or not? And, cause I didn't want a lot to do with the ARPA, I don't have time for that part, so, so at that time, it was what it was at, and then when we got the lettuce fund,
Thank you.
that one, opened up that we could completely fund her through that grant or grant allocation money, and keep her for up to 4 years of funding through those two grants together. So for the first 2 years, she'll be funded through the ARPA Slurpee, and then as soon as that money runs out, she'll roll under the lettuce fund, and so it's already part of that plan that she's got on what will be funded through those. So, so I went out and I talked to other, counties to see how they handled it, their grants administrator, when we got these two large sums of money coming in, as well as a lot of other money that, like the road projects and stuff like that. It's a lot to track, a lot to audit. And just kind of, like you said, keep it all in balance. What grants are you working on? When are they due? How much are you spending? What can you spend it on? It's a nightmare. So, so then I got to thinking, I think it makes more sense if she's reporting under me, because I have to do all of the auditing of them, we have to process all the invoicing of them, we have to make sure that out of all those, they're actually going to the right fund for that expense. So I talked to Colleen about it, she came to me and talked to me, and she goes, I just think it makes sense, and I said, yeah, I do too, because we work really close together to have her report under me. It would not change the authority of approving any grants or expenditures. You guys would still do that. She would just be reporting structure up to me, and it's not in my budget, but it's not in yours either, so it's completely out of budget, not budgeted whatsoever.
Anything you would add to that?
Works pretty well.
So all it would do really is just you're still gonna work with her for the audits and work with us for the grant approvals.
Yes.
Just
Yep.
clear.
And you guys approve all grants or expenditures.
Okay.
And I was, I guess there is something I would add. I was reading through I haven't finished it yet, so I'm not gonna do it, but there's, because there's a lot of opportunities and sometimes there's a time frame on it, we had discussed how, is it okay for me to just go after funding? And then you guys have to sign off on it and say, yes, we wanna accept it if there's an opportunity. And so I just wanted to, put this in the packet with that request, that this just says, you're okay with me going after the funding and then bringing it to you and saying, yay, we got this pot of money, do you want it? Kind of a thing.
Okay. And do the former Board of Commissioners, did they direct you towards certain, please go after this or that, or was it totally up to you to find the grants, go apply for the grants, and then see if they wanted the grants? Has anybody ever said, no, I don't want that?
Not in this county.
Okay. Okay.
Now I love referrals, so and Tracy's really good about that as well, and Tammy, that when something comes across your email where you see something, and I did get a couple others from Jay and John that would come in weird places, send them on to me, and that's, I read through them, I figure out what it is, can we even qualify for it, and then, work through what does the proposal look like and how much time is this actually gonna take.
Okay.
So I love referrals.
Okay.
In that, to answer that question, yes,
Okay.
give me direction.
Give me
leads. I love leads.
I did learn something last night that I thought was kind of interesting at my fire commissioner meeting. The Panhandle Health is got that big pot of money for the opioid crisis that most counties are giving to them to come up with programs and whatnot to curtail opioid use and fentanyl impacts and all of that. And I guess, Shoshone County is #1 in the state for opioid overdose problems. We have Narcan uses on a daily basis. So, because of that, and because we're a small county and we need a lot of funding, they're gonna be putting programs that even more money than what we're giving them will be coming back to Shoshone County. And that's been being discussed at the public health level at the state as well as at district one. So that's really good. So I see that we'll be getting more of that probably. And it'd be good to, have an ear to that funding with Colleen, I think. Because you guys will be involved at the meeting level here, but there'll be more money out there, I think, for that kind of stuff.
And there definitely is, and we're already tapping into that with the prosecuting attorney. Plus it will provide UA kids for free. It is the Narcan. So I spoke with the sheriff and undersheriff about that. Is they had one because it's so expensive that everybody kind of took with them and was very careful with. And now they can have, everybody can have their Narcan, Narcoloxin. Yeah, it's the overdose inhaler.
I want to slip inside
Yeah.
those.
Let's come up with a different word for that.
And, Idaho had received an approximate, this is seems to be a moving target on the actual amount of money, but $119 million. And then with the formula, Shoshone County received 1.28% of whatever that pot is. And then Panhandle Health District received 14.5%. So by turning that to them, we now have that grant administration and compliance through Panhandle Health, so we can go to them. And I've had a lot of conversations with people and McKenna over there, and we can use that for a lot of different things. So we're gonna be building a room so that they can have some therapy rooms. We're working on trying to get mental health and the drug therapies so that we can do all that. But that kind of money can go towards the hard costs of building that room. We don't have to do it out of other grants. And it will provide the Narcan, it will provide training. We're working on a grant for the judge's office to send her staff and also probation to the drug court training in Texas, I believe it is, every year. And so that's a pretty substantial amount. So we've started preparing that application, and that just keeps our personnel up to date. There's also CE trainings on that, so they can keep their CE credits up and working through that. So there's a lot that we're working hand in hand with Panhandle for the opioid crisis. And you do have to tie it to that that type of a crisis. But again, there's some ancillary things that you can get, but it's really great for some of those hard costs that are not like staff or weird things like that, but you can use it for, you know, the equipment that we need.
And that one we had, I believe, 19,000 that we gave them this year was for just 3 providers. And there's many more out there. So when we get notified by, usually it's IC, will let us know that there's another, group of pharmaceutical companies that are being charged, and now the award's been out there, and you have to sign up to say, yeah, we want to participate in that. And you have a time frame for when you have to do that. We did that the first go around for the first 3 companies, Johnson & Johnson, and I don't remember the other 2. But, it's really important to kind of watch for those kinds of things. So I've got my ear to the ground, and so does Colleen, listen to see when we hear something about that through a Corks group or Family Health or whatever.
Okay.
Make sure we get in on those.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna open it up to anybody, any questions to the table or in the audience. And if you do want to speak or ask a question, I'd ask you would state your name for the clerk. No? No question?
Oh, I do.
Oh. I was just gonna call on you anyway.
Matt Beener. You're right, Colleen, the Treasury Department is boring, so I went to the National Association of Counties and they dummied it up a lot. So reporting requirements, is there any for the sub-recipients to the recipient?
No, because of the way it was structured, it's not a sub-recipient relationship.
This is under the first pocket of money.
Correct, the Slurpee.
Slurpee. Use your terms, Matt.
Huh?
Slurpee.
Slurpee. Well, they used to call it ARPA, so it's in the record. ARPA. So there's no requirements,
Because of the way it was structured as requests, and it had to tie back to some kind of a downturn, economic downturn or infrastructure. There's on that form, there's the different boxes that you check, and then you have to
Right.
justify it. In talking with Treasury and then the Idaho Association of Counties, Sarah Westbrook, we made sure that was structured so that there wasn't the sub-recipient relationship there. Because it's also a reimbursement, so we're not giving them money to do it, they have to incur the expenses, and then it's a reimbursement of expenses. So we made sure it wasn't a sub-recipient relationship.
is there any procurement requirements for the sub-recipients?
They have to abide by their internal policies and procedures as because they're the ones doing the work. So, I mean, it's the wrong terms for it, but they're the contractors, so they have to do all of that. We just are funding that project.
Right, but us as a recipient,
The county is not liable for them, but they are required to make sure that they're doing this. Now, procurement doesn't apply to a lot of those organizations that received it because they're nonprofits.
okay, let's see, the broadband. And you haven't given that, there's not a company that's out there that, okay, so you don't have a commitment. So on the timeline for that $1 million, and all the rest of them, I guess. So that's $1 million, and when does it have to be spent, 25? The L, whatever money that is.
LAT,
No,
LAT,
that's
yeah.
$1 million, wasn't it, out of ARPA, the original?
They're all out of ARPA, so the $1 million is LATCF,
That's not out of the first budget,
not
it's
out
out
of
of
the
the
first,
second
it's
budget.
out of the second, correct.
So there is nobody that has their hand out for the money right now?
No, everybody does, but no. Nobody has been identified, or solicitations have not gone out
The
either.
question arises, how long do you hold that? Isn't it 25 when it has to be spent, or 24?
26.
No, not on the LATCF, there's really not an end date.
Mm-hmm.
That can go through 28 is the last number on the reporting cycle for that, so they didn't really set an end date on that. They just said, you're gonna have to keep reporting to us until it's all spent, so
And
it
they don't
behooves
want
you
you
to
to
do it right.
incur reoccurring charges.
Right, yep.
I guess my question is how long do you hold that? You gotta hold it until 2028, the $1 million,
No.
or?
No, because we can't wait that long on having those kind of broadband projects done. And it would pair with the other federal funding, like the BEAD funding and stuff that's coming through, that would get projects going, but then, so there'll be timelines, and no, it won't I don't wanna see it go to that. That would be up to the commissioners on how they wanna do it, but personally.
Right, you don't wanna
no.
have $1 million sitting there for 3 years and nobody biting at it, and
Yeah.
there's other things to be done.
Yes,
The county, the second part of the grant, or that LAT, whatever it is. Most of the items that were brought to the county, there's no bids on. There's no backups on it. So what happens if they come in and they're over? Is that gonna be expected to come out of the taxpayers?
that would have to be approved, cause everything was approved up to, and it was just funding that was available, that the departments will do their procedures internally before money is spent on it.
Right, you see my point, if they run out of money with no bid,
Mhm.
they're just guesstimating.
Yep.
The money, if they don't spend as much, I guess you guys give it away again. I guess this one's to Tammy. I know you guys have spoke to Hayden Ross about tracking.
No problem.
Right.
I got it in writing from Tony that you didn't see a conflict at all.
No, that's not my point. I'm sure he's not gonna track these extra funds for the same $35,000 we're paying him.
Those aren't, as far as tracking them,
Well,
it's gonna be
single
real
line.
simple, it's an in and an out, we've created funds to track each one of those separately. So he just looks at the one fund when we create 216, 217, something like that.
It's now been shifted to a one, so.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So, he actually told us how to formulate it, and in each thing, it's like a one-time thing. It's like we get the, we approve it, it's not even in there yet till they spend it, like say, when they bought a truck the other day, or a
Yeah.
car, whatever. They order it, they bring us the invoice, as soon as we cut the check for the invoice, we code it, and in our coding, it will represent what, department got it. So like if it's Jerry's, it's got a specific number, and then it will go to like a capital account for that and different things, but it's really only, all the LATCF funding that will be done will be all in that one fund. And it's in and out, it's kinda like,
No, I guess I'm talking on the audit.
right.
He's
So
gonna do
because
this-
they'll just look at that audit and say, I got an in, I got an out, they match, and she's got paperwork that matches it up, it's in, and it's all electronic, so it's very quick.
Well, what I read about the single audit, he had to make sure
Single
the
audit's different.
proper procedures were being followed. That's what
And he
my
does,
point.
he does a single audit now.
I know he does,
Yeah.
but this is extra work. Is he gonna do the same?
It
We're gonna
won't
stick
be
at the
single
30
audit.
We're gonna stay at the $34,000
Yes.
for his audit, okay.
Well, we only do one single audit a year.
Right.
It's a requirement that we do a single audit every county, so
Mhm.
the wording in that meant that if you're not doing a single audit now, you have to do one.
Right.
But because we get SRS funding, we do a single audit every year, and we have for years, yeah.
I guess I just have one thing to clarify about the $17,000. I don't know what was done in there, but I was in a meeting. The cameras in here, I never heard anything about. The only reason BJ was brought into it is he could get better prices on the security cameras over there and over here. The $17,000 was up for you guys, so.
And the other part of it is they need to work together. We wanna make sure that whatever we get, we have a complementary system at both places, so one person can work on them. We don't have all these different vendors doing all these different things and they don't interface, so
No, I
BJ and Zach are now working together to make sure.
I agree
that
with you
works.
that was done, but the cameras in here, I never heard him speak about the cameras in here.
It was on the wish list, and we just didn't have the quotes for those to be able to say yes to.
It was tabled.
Yeah, it was tabled
Okay.
until that.
And I
Like
have
I
that
said,
in the
it's
meeting minutes as
discussed.
well.
Well, we're discussing it now, cause we'd
Yep.
like to get cameras.
Yep.
Any further questions?
No.
I would like to thank you for the efforts and look forward to working with you in more detail on how this works and understanding it and being a part of it. And I appreciate the relief that we're giving the taxpayers by doing some of this, so appreciate.
Thank you.
I think I have a lot to learn, and don't take me as butting in or micromanaging. I just wanna figure out how it all works. So I'll be picking your brain.
And I'm terrible at acronyms, so coming from the insurance world, that just, they fly off my tongue. So if I get into an acronym soup, just let me know.
I'll make
We'll
you up a
back it
couple
up.
new Slurpees, Buds, whatever. I can name those things.
Perfect.
I used to work for the federal government, so, yeah.
Yeah, that works.
All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. I thank you, everybody, for taking your time to attend.